Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of People in Tech. In this series, we're exploring the intersection of technology and leadership through the lens of industry experts. And today we're in Austin, Texas, and I'm delighted to be joined by Ben Caparoon, software engineering manager at Amazon, a thought leader in the tech space, a great person. And Ben, thank you for joining us today on the platform.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, good to have you here. So I think Amazon needs no introduction. It's one of the world's largest companies with over 1.5 million employees worldwide. I think last year they reported revenue of over 500 billion. And it's also home to one of the biggest engineering teams in the world with tens of thousands of engineers working on anything from cloud computing to AI to logistics, you name it. So I'd like to start by maybe you giving us an overview and a run through of your career path and what led you to the position that you are in now.
Well, when I was young, my mom was an artist. My aunt was an artist. And I wanted to be an artist,
Right.
a fine artist. My dream was to move to New York, be a famous artist. Soon I realized that you don't make any money as an artist. And, you know, I enjoy eating and having things in life. So I thought, well, maybe I need to refocus my attention. So my second love was always computers. If you ever watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off, that movie.
I haven't seen it yet.
That and War Games were two movies that kind of inspired me to get into technology. Because as a kid, Ferris Bueller, he skipped high school one day, and he changes his grades in the computer network. So I was like, man,
the first hack.
Yeah, can you do that?
Yeah.
And then War Games, he actually, hacks into NORAD and, plays a nuclear war game with an AI, essentially.
Right.
And I was like, man, that is amazing. I didn't know you could do things like that. So that's really kind of what got me into it. My first job, though, out of college was doing UI, UX work. So at that point, I didn't know how to program.
Right.
I just knew I had a art background, so I wanted to meld those two worlds, computer and art.
Yeah.
So that's where I got into designing the user experience.
Right.
And back then, we didn't call it user experience.
What did you call it back then?
UI?
Just UI.
Pretty pictures?
Yeah.
That's what the developers wanted. Just go create your pretty pictures.
Okay.
And so I did. And I worked for a rather large ad agency in downtown Dallas. We had a lot of tech companies in California.
Yeah.
We had some universities we worked with, Miller Brewing Company, a local fast food restaurant called Whataburger here in Texas.
Okay. This was all here in Texas.
Yeah. So I got my first, I guess, initial exposure there. And I realized, the design stuff was a little bit too finicky for me.
Right.
Because people can say, well, that blue, I said blue, but that's a little too blue.
Yeah.
Can you make it less blue?
Yeah, it's hard when people don't exactly know what they want.
Yeah. And I looked at the programmers, the developers, and I thought, man, they just do what they need
implement.
to do.
Yeah.
It either works or it doesn't. So that's where I started getting into software development. Changed a few times in my career, but that's really kind of how I got into tech.
With web development, you started. Okay, interesting. And it's funny you say that about your family were in the art one, because my dad he had an art gallery essentially in Tunisia, and he worked with artists, and so I know that doesn't really make a lot of.
It's fun. It's a passion.
It's a passion, yeah. But especially
can't support a family.
Yeah, exactly. So you started as a software developer. And you've moved into more of a managerial position. So what are the challenges that you faced when moving into more of a management position? Because as a software developer, your success is essentially measured by your individual contribution, let's say, to a project. Now, as a manager, your success is measured by the collective success of the team that you're managing. So how have you been able to navigate that transition?
So, I'll step back a little bit. The way I got into management was I had managers in the past that weren't that great,
Right.
to be frank.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I was too young to really understand or think about it. I didn't have that enough perspective. Looking back and knowing what I know now, for me, being a good manager is really looking out for the benefit of your team instead of yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And I think if I were to quantify it or qualify it some way,
Yeah.
it would be those bad managers I've had in the past really weren't looking out for the team. They were looking out for themselves.
Okay.
So my number one comment to anybody exploring the idea of getting into management, I say, do you care about people? That's the number one aspect of a good manager, is if you care about the people you work with and represent on a daily basis, because that's what you really are, a representative of your team, right? Exactly. If you don't have a strong desire to help your team for the betterment of either the team or their career, whatever they need at the time, if you're not really looking out for their best interest, you're going to have limited success, because you're not going to build that trust. Your team's not going to trust you. And so when things get hard, they're going to be like, peace out. I'm going to find somebody else or another company to work with. Right. And so if you build that trust early on, I think that will pay dividends later on. Because if you bend over backwards for your team and help your team and on an individual basis, then they don't want to switch teams. They don't want you to leave your team because they know that you're there for them.
You're standing behind them. So you're there for them when times get hard and
Exactly. And I think that's kind of that obstacle where people face, where they don't know how to develop that trust. And it's really hard if you're only worried about yourself. Because you're like, I want to be a successful manager. I want to be a successful
I want to be the one who shines and gets all the credit and whatnot.
And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because I think from what I understand, there's kind of a mixture from what you just said about management and leadership. And a lot of people sometimes confuse the both, because management is a lot about structuring objectives. It's about execution. It's about organization. Whereas on the other hand, leadership is more about mentoring. It's about guiding people towards a shared vision. It's about encouraging people. And in a large organization, would you say that to successfully achieve the objectives that are at hand, you can leverage one style over the other, or do you feel like it's a combination of both that is needed to get to where you need to get as a team?
Yeah, I've read a lot of management books. And the reason why I've done a lot of reading is because I never had a good mentor. Somebody that kind of taught me how to be a good manager. Right. Or a good leader, to your point, because they can be the same or they can be vastly different.
Right.
I think you explained it very well. Management is kind of the coordination of all these things that you have to do, right? Even employee reviews is part of the management task. But leadership is setting the tone and the culture of your team by your direct actions. Like I tell my team, I would never ask you to do anything that I wouldn't do myself.
Right.
And so, I've been in situations both at Amazon and outside where I've stayed up 24 hours fixing issues. I didn't cause them. Somebody on my team caused it, right? But I don't care. I just want the problem to be fixed. And I'm right there with my team. I don't say, see you in the morning. Hope you get it worked out. Like I'm right there. Even if I'm not hands on keyboard, I'm just there for support. And to let them know that they're not alone. Right. I slept on the floor one time because I was taking a break. I was up so long I slept under my desk.
Wow.
Just to be there with my team.
Yeah.
Because we were having something happened. I don't even remember the details, where a database got blown away and we had to do a backup, and it was a very time consuming backup.
Right.
It lasted about 24 hours.
And it has to be done in a timely manner as well, because,
Exactly.
you know, yeah.
And so, I think it's really important to understand why you want to be a manager and what you hope to get out of it.
Mhm.
Because for me, it's really about serving people.
Yeah.
And it's less about me.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my approach.
Yeah. And do you feel this is something that may be lacking in organizations? Do you feel like this is something that is, that people could do better on?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to kind of put your finger on it sometimes. You might work with people on a day in and day out basis, and you might think they're doing well. But then if you go investigate a little bit or ask the team, maybe they're not doing so well. So one thing, you know, in technology, we have different agile ways of doing business, right?
Right.
Scrum is one of them. And part of Scrum is you do a retro after every sprint. And a sprint is typically a 1 to 3 week time frame where you do a bunch of work, right?
Yeah.
And then afterwards you do a retro and you say, okay, what went well and what didn't? What can we learn from this? So you continually improve, right?
Yeah. So a retro is kind of like a review,
exactly. Exactly. And so I do that on my own, right? After every project or every conversation, I go, how did that conversation go?
Right.
Maybe it was a tough conversation. Maybe I'm talking to somebody that on my team that's not performing well.
Okay.
That they need to improve, and I'm there to support them.
Yeah.
So I have that initial conversation. Sometimes people get defensive. Sometimes people welcome it. Yeah. But after every one, I think to myself, how did I do?
Right.
There was something there that maybe I could improve, right?
Yeah.
And I continually to look at myself to see how I improve. And so I think as managers, if you don't do that, as leaders, if you don't do that, and by the way, you don't have to be a manager to be a leader. Yeah. You can be a leader and be an entry level, developer.
Exactly.
But if you're not continually asking yourself, how did I do and what could I improve? It puts the focus on you instead of other people. So you could say, well, that person I talked to, man, they need to be more humble. They need to listen more rather than speak. Like you could put all this stuff on them about all the ways they need to improve. But what about yourself?
Exactly.
I approach things from my perspective first. Yeah. Not because I care about myself more, because I actually care about them more. But if I don't learn to improve and work through difficult situations where maybe I didn't do a good job, then I'll never get better and I'll lose the trust of my team. Yeah. So,
and is this something that you've, worked on over time? Yeah. Is because how do you become aware of the fact that you need to be reflecting or looking into the mirror, because you mentioned at the beginning that you had some difficult managers at the beginning. Do you think that kind of kickstarted this thought in your head that maybe I don't want to become like that, so maybe I need to start also looking at myself? Or what do you think?
I would like to think that would probably be the case in many people. I don't think that's the case for me. And the reason is I believe I learned that from my father. My father would never let us make an excuse.
Wow.
For anything.
What does that mean?
If we got into trouble, I'll use a very, very simplistic example. Running across the street without looking both ways. Yeah. Very dangerous. And as a kid, I just need to get to the other side. You know, maybe my baseball or basketball.
Yeah, you just focus on
I just need to get over there, right? Well, if I use that excuse, like, hey, I ran across traffic because my ball was over there. My dad would have said, no, you made a decision to run over there.
Wow.
And you didn't take into into consideration the consequences that could have happened. And so I think that's kind of where the teaching came from, is I had to think about everything, because my dad would not let me and my siblings make excuses.
You'd have to always constantly reflect.
Yeah. So he would ask you, why did you do that? And he would not allow us to say, well, because my friends did it. No. Why did you do it? I don't care about your friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why did you do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it really forced you to think about your actions.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I would like to give credit to other things or myself or whatever, but it really came from my father.
Yeah. So I guess when you grow up with that, it becomes more of like an intrinsic approach to situations. That's incredible. Yeah. And we've talked about leadership, management, but I think a third pillar, which is really important, and we actually briefly spoke about this on the phone. You brought it up on the phone, that mentorship is something that is crucial as well for the success of a team and also for self-improvement. So how important has mentorship been for you throughout your journey?
Oh man, I wish I would have had a mentor. My father was my mentor when I was young. My father, by the way, had a 6th grade education. Grew up very poor.
Yeah.
It wasn't that he didn't believe in college or higher education. He just didn't think you needed it.
Right.
He thought just working hard would get you where you wanted to go, which is, from a certain perspective, is 100% correct. Like, there are so many people without degrees, without colleges, that are millionaires, billionaires now.
Yeah.
Right. But for me, I didn't have a mentorship after I left the house. And from a career perspective, my dad, he was a lumberjack.
Yeah.
He worked at a bakery.
Yeah.
He played minor league baseball.
Yeah.
So many things, a truck driver.
Yeah.
He was a very smart man too, by the way, but he just didn't know how to relate to like the corporate world, because he was never in it. So I never really had a good mentor.
Right.
Until I started at Amazon I started at Amazon over 4 years ago, but it wasn't about a year and a half in. I was looking for a new role. Okay. I was almost done with Amazon. I was like, maybe Amazon's not for me.
Right.
And I didn't want to leave because I liked a lot of aspects of how Amazon runs their business. But I just felt like I was missing something within the Amazon culture.
Okay.
And, Amazon kind of expects you to just dive in and get things done and learn fast, right? Which is not a problem. But I just felt like I missed something. So I met this other senior manager at Amazon. He had a role open and we talked. I happened to be in Seattle at the time.
Okay.
And we met in person, and such a nice guy.
This was about 2.5 years ago, you said?
Yeah. Yeah.
So fairly recently.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm 49 now, and 2.5 years ago, I got my first real mentor.
Wow.
And he was amazing. I told him, I said, hey, if I join your team, this is what I want out of the experience. I need you to mentor me on just Amazon in general, processes, how to perform better at Amazon.
So you proactively asked for the sense of direction, or for this style of communication to happen.
Exactly. Wow. And he was absolutely amazing. His name's Juan Haley.
Juan Haley.
Yeah. And he's in Washington. He retired because of RTO. He lived really far out and he just didn't want to relocate.
Yeah.
But he retired. Now he's doing woodworking, I think.
Oh, so similar to where your father started.
Exactly.
Wow.
We had a lot in common.
Yeah. So kind of going full circle here.
Yeah. But he was amazing to work with. Yeah. Never seemed really stressed out, even though I'm sure he probably was. But he just really kind of very patient and very, helpful anytime I had a question.
Yeah.
It's not like we had therapy sessions every day, but, if I had a problem or wanted to know how to resolve it the best way, I would say, hey, Juan, what do you think about this? This is the approach that I'm thinking about taking. What do you think? Is there a better approach or whatever? So I never came to him with problems. I came to him with solutions, but I just needed a little bit of guidance
Yeah.
whether or not there was a better way, right? So, yeah, he was amazing. My point in telling you all that was I was 47, 48
When you got your first.
when I got my first mentor. So what I would suggest to people is get a mentor as early as possible.
Yeah.
Seek out people.
Yeah, with your approach, you could seek out your mentor. You don't have to wait for a mentor basically to be appointed to you or to come to you.
Exactly.
You know, it could be someone who maybe you possibly already know and you ask for mentorship, maybe even.
Exactly. Yep. And it's never too late. Like, and you might have different mentors for different topics.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mentioned to you that I do woodworking on the side, right? I mean, just for fun. But I have a mentor for woodworking. Like, hey, I'm trying to build this thing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't quite know the mechanics of it.
Right.
How would you approach it?
Yeah.
And they go, oh, well, that's easy. You just do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
You know?
So you can have mentors for different things that you do within life, not just your career. You can have it, I guess, for your passion as well.
Absolutely.
For various ways.
You know, you could have a mentor for families, for relationships, right?
Yeah.
I try to be a good mentor for my son. And part of, it's funny, part of when I mentor people, I always ask for feedback.
Yeah.
How am I doing? Is there anything that I can do to improve?
Right.
You know, and it's both ways. I give feedback to other people, but I actually do that with my kids too.
Okay.
I'm like, hey, how am I as a dad?
Yeah.
You
How
know,
many kids do you have?
Two. Yeah, 5 and 9.
5 and 9. Okay.
And
so they're at the age already where they can absorb all this information and retain it. And
exactly. And, you know, I'll give feedback. I'll get some really good feedback from my kids.
Yeah.
And, you know, for the most part, it's good. You know, we like to play. So we play. You know?
Yeah.
But there's very constructive feedback too.
Yeah.
Like, hey, sometimes, Poppy, you're stressed out. You know, if you could be a little less stressed out.
Kids are honest as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
So, yeah, you can be a mentor any point in your life, because as you get older, you get more experience. You can ask for mentors at any point in your life. And I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons why I've done well is because of my father's mentorship when I was young. And then the mentorship I've gotten from books and then from the manager at Amazon that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. I really like this point because a lot of the time people, I think, don't realize that you can reach out for mentorship. You know, people expect these signs to happen and things to, happen and then for mentorship to come to them and for them to find the way. And I think a very popular thing now are coaches. You know, people pay money for people to basically, coach them, let's say. But yeah, back to your point, I think that, people can take a step back and be just like, wait, let me maybe look for a mentor, you know? So, and with the position that you're in now, and the experience that you've had with mentorship, and now that you know how important is it, do you have a certain approach when it comes to being a mentor for your team, let's say, or being a mentor for someone who wants to navigate their career path a bit better? How do you approach that, since with your own experience, you're the one who sought out mentorship?
Yeah.
Do you wait for people to seek out mentorship from your side because that's when you know they're ready for it and they really want it? Or do you throw things their way, let's say, to see if they would catch on?
So I set with my team specifically, I set up weekly one-on-ones, a 30-minute one-on-one with everybody every week. Now,
individually or
individually.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's never around projects. And this is the way I explain it to my team. So I don't want to talk about product updates or project updates.
Yeah.
We can talk about that, in our morning huddle. Right. What I care about is you individually, what's important to you. That's different for everybody. Sometimes people are good at the level and position they're at.
Yeah. And
they just want to continue to get better at that level. Some people want to get promoted. So we have different levels at Amazon, L4, L5, L6 on up. And so if somebody wants to move from L5 to L6, I have a career growth plan for them that I give everybody on my team.
Yeah.
And I say, give me your work summary. Since you started or since you last got promoted.
Okay.
Give me your work summary. Amazon has and this is very specific to Amazon.
Okay.
I tailor it outside of Amazon differently, but at Amazon, we have very specific role guidelines that you have to meet in order to get to the next level.
Interesting.
And you have to really be performing at the next level for a sustainable amount of time to prove that you can do it before you get promoted. The last thing that Amazon wants anybody to go through is get promoted too early, and then they fail at that level. And then they end up getting let go. Right. That's not good for anybody.
It also protects
exactly.
I guess, the individual.
So part of what I really appreciate about Amazon and their promotion process is you really have to be performing at that level. And it's not just me saying it. We can't be buddies and go out for a beer and me promote you. I literally have to write a promotion doc that outlines all the work in data format. It's a story, but it's less about my perspective and it's about the data, what the data tells you.
Right.
So if I put in my perspective, people that review it, the leadership that reviews it above me, because it has to go through several reviews before it gets approved. If I were to use language like this person performs better than everybody else and leaves it there, they would say, that doesn't tell me anything. How do I know they perform
Where's
better?
the proof?
So we look at code commits, or we look at the projects they worked on. We look at the scope. Did they do it all by themselves? Did they, ask for help when they needed to? Did they handle it at the level that they need to get promoted, right?
Yeah.
And so if that story's not there with the data, it'll get shut down. So that career growth doc is based on the metrics or the components that make up that promo doc.
Right.
And so we evaluate how close they are to the promo doc in their current work summary, find the gaps, and then look for projects or situations that will help fill the gaps in order to get the experience they need.
Yeah.
Right.
And you mentioned that this isn't just the level that they achieve and then that they could be promoted, but they have to maintain it for a certain amount of time.
Exactly. So let's say somebody just really did fantastic on a project, but it was the only project they worked on.
Yeah.
Did they get lucky? Can they do that over and over and over again?
Can they repeat that success?
Yeah, that's what we look for.
Okay.
So it's a trend that we see in people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And again, it can't be my interpretation. I have to present data to let the reader or the audience of this doc to make their own determination. Right. This person actually raises the bar at Amazon above 50% of the people at that level. Yeah, let's promote it.
Yeah. And upon that, because you talked about there being data to prove someone's progress, someone's success. And at the beginning of our conversation, we also spoke about leadership and how now being a leader or being a manager, your success is basically the success of your whole team. So when someone is going through the phase of being promoted, let's say from, a senior software developer to more of a managerial position, is data enough to basically know whether they will be able to perform in that next position? Or are there also other interpersonal aspects that come into play where, like, this person could be a good manager, could be a good leader, or this person is solely like a technical person and is really good at their code?
Yep. So what you're describing, at least in the world of Amazon, is not a promotion. It's a role transfer.
Yeah.
So an SDE is very specific to software engineers, right? They have particular things they need to be good at, right? Managers is a completely different role.
Yeah.
It's a tech role, but it's a manager role. So you have to be good at certain things.
Different set of skills.
Yeah. So what we typically do, you can't get promoted into a management role, right? You go from a job family and you get promoted within the job family.
Right.
If you want to switch to a manager, then we have different ways of making that happen. But one very common way is to do kind of a test drive before you buy.
Okay.
So we'll put them in that role
Yeah.
if we have an open role. And this just happened with a senior dev on my previous team. I recently switched teams.
Okay.
And he's been interested in becoming a manager.
Switching to it.
And so he's trying it before he buys it.
Okay.
He wants to make sure that he likes it. And the senior manager wants to make sure that he can perform in that role.
Yeah.
So after a period of time, whatever that is, it's different for everybody. Then they make a decision. Okay, we're going to officially make you a manager.
Right.
So, but to your point, it requires a different set of skills. And you have to make sure that person's going to be successful.
Yeah.
Because then once he's officially a manager, then he will get evaluated on the criteria for a manager, not an SDE. And so you want to make sure you're setting that person up for success.
Yes.
And not failure.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And now we've talked about 3 really important pillars, which are management, leadership, mentorship, and all of these are essential for, the success of a team. But let's take a step back, because before the team being able to be successful, you actually need a team. You need to put a team together. So let's talk about hiring for a second. What are some of the qualities and characteristics that you look for when hiring someone to join your team?
Well, above all, they have to be excellent in the tech space that they're coming into. So if they're AI, they need to be excellent in AI.
Yeah.
The bar at Amazon is very high.
I can imagine, yeah.
And so many people have to practice to even pass the interview. Some practice for 6 months, some practice a year, just to pass the interview. And what I've noticed is people coming straight out of college tend to do better on the coding aspect of the interview than people that have been doing it for a while.
Right.
Just because they've had to do it in school. Whereas once you're in the real world, outside of Amazon and some just ordinary company, you're not building things with the same mindset as you would at Amazon. Because we deal with scale like no other. If you can imagine any AWS web service and all the millions of transactions happening through each of those services and the dependency services, you may have layers of services that build on top of each other just to make Dynamo work, right? And so if you're not considering the scale and how well your code is working, then it's going to be very laggy, and every team that owns a different layer, if they never considered it, it would be very slow. It'd be like dial-up service, right? So that's the reason why it takes so much time, because we care about scale. We care about extensibility. We care about maintainability, right? And so if you're just brute forcing a solution, that's not good enough.
It's not.
Right? We really do care about big O notation and solid principles and things like that, right? So number one, they have to have the skill set.
There's no way around that.
No way around it. Number two, you have to have enough experience. We have leadership principles that all of our interview questions are based on, right? And so you have to have enough experience that when you're asked a question like, tell me about a time when a project failed. Well, if you say, well, I've never had a project fail. Well, they'll either call BS on it or they'll say you don't have enough experience. Either way, you just failed. The interview.
Right? Because I mean, if you worked on enough projects, at some point one of them isn't going to go as planned.
Exactly.
It's just the way things are in this space and in every other space as well.
Exactly. They're not saying you failed. Maybe you did. But really what they're trying to get at is, what did you learn from it? How are you going to prevent failure from happening again in a similar situation, right? So that's the other thing. But one thing that is not necessarily in the questions we ask, it's kind of underlying in the stories that they tell, is humility. For me, humility is a key part, because if you get somebody in, they could be the smartest man in the world. But if they're so arrogant that nobody wants to work with them, then you're not going to have a good team.
No.
So you have to pick people that are humble enough to take feedback and apply that feedback.
Yeah.
Whether it's coming from me or, somebody else on the team, but you really want to get a humble person that's has a very high tech bar.
Okay. Yeah. I guess it's that sweet spot between someone who's humble enough to take that feedback, but also good enough to be able to then implement that feedback as well into the work that it.
I was in an org in Amazon for a while where I don't know what role job family level he was at, but and I can't even recall the man's name. I should know it like the back of my hand, but he came from Oracle.
Right.
He's the guy that created Java. And he was within our org.
Yeah.
And we were building basically AI and IoT services for AWS. But we had that type of resource at our disposal.
Yeah.
And the people that I've personally worked with have all been humble and gracious and nice. Now they're very transparent. They'll tell you exactly their thoughts.
Yeah.
But it's always done in a very appropriate manner.
Okay.
They're never going to belittle anybody.
Yeah.
At least that's my exposure to these people. So when you're talking about somebody that developed Java, the language that everybody uses around the world,
basically in the space,
and you work with him, and he's as nice as anybody, right? That's the type of people the caliber of people that you work with at Amazon.
Yeah. And it goes back to that saying, like, the more you learn, the more humble you should become, Yeah. And interesting, because we just touched up upon sometimes when things don't go as planned, because projects fail sometimes, or like maybe not completely fail, but maybe not turn out the way we expected them to turn out, or at least the process. And how do you go about keeping the team together and motivated when difficult times come? Yeah. Because they come to us all in whichever line of work that we work in.
I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier about having your team's best interest in mind.
Yeah.
If you're constantly like pushing them, like, hey, we got to get this out. We got to get everybody's working overtime. And if you constantly do that, you're going to burn people out.
Yeah.
Right. So I reserve that for when it's really needed. And I don't abuse it, right? And so when times get hard, they know when I say something that is like, okay, we need to deliver.
Yeah.
We all need to band together.
It's for the greater good,
Yeah, because they know I'm not the type of person that just pushes them.
It's crunch time. Like, we got to pull ourselves
Every
together.
day can't be crunch time, right? The other thing, I haven't done it with my team that I'm with right now, but my previous team, I had a few conversations about mental health too. Somebody asked me how I stay calm or not get stressed out or whatever. Because I try to stay fairly even keel, right?
Yeah.
And after the chat, I realized, he was dealing with a lot of anxiety, and I shared some experiences that I had with anxiety. Never had anxiety until I had kids. Now I have two little things that I have to keep alive 24/7. That puts a lot of anxiety on me.
Yeah.
And even though I know I shouldn't worry about it, in the back of my mind, every time I drop them off at school, I worry.
Yeah.
Something could happen to me. Something could happen to them, whatever. So I try to make every day meaningful. But I shared those experiences with him, and he's like, man, I had no idea. And I gave him some tips, and I said, you know what? This is a good topic. I'm going to bring it up at our team huddle tomorrow morning and just share it with everybody. And shared some resources that Amazon has. And I said, if you ever feel overwhelmed or stressed, or like you just can't take it anymore, come talk to me.
Yeah.
You might need some time off, or let's put you on a different project, or whatever, whatever it is. I want to make sure that you're mentally healthy.
Yeah.
That's as important, if not more important, than being physically healthy.
Yeah.
Because it can really impact you, and it could really impact the team too.
And that's a powerful approach as well, as in showing your vulnerability as well, for then others to be able to share as well. I mean, that's not something that everyone does.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that's
Oh,
important
man.
as well, you know?
I wear my feelings on my sleeve too. So we were doing this town hall. We brought everybody in all around the world that were part of this org. And we flew everybody to Seattle. And I was running the town hall.
Mhm.
And I had taken a medical leave of absence earlier in the year, end of last year, early this year. And I had some medical issues that I had to work through. And my team just did it without me there. I mean, they just took care of business. There was another manager that was supposed to help, but he was very overwhelmed with, his current project.
Yeah.
So my team lead and everybody on the team just banded it together and took care of business. And when I got back, it was like I never left.
Wow.
And so I was saying thank you during the town hall, and I got real choked up and teared up a little bit. But I was worried how that came across, because I was like, oh, did I look like a pushover or whatever? And I had so many people come up to me afterwards like, man, that was really nice.
Yeah.
Like not many people would be that vulnerable in front of,
and that shows strength as well. Yeah. Because it's not easy to be that version of yourself with your team. Yeah. But that's really powerful as well, because although you weren't physically present there, you've been able to create a culture and create like a leadership style that even if you're not physically present, the others are able to pick up on and carry on. So that is something I think which can be seen as a great success in itself.
Yeah, and it's not a one size fits all either. So I just switched teams, and I'm learning about my new team, learning about the projects, and what I applied in my previous team may not work for this team. We may need different mechanisms, right? But if you're not paying attention to the team and what the people are saying, you won't know. So I have to be humble too, and I can't just expect, oh, I know how to fix everything, because I may not. It may be a different thing that I need to think about.
Interesting. And now I'd want to move to a bit more of a strategic question. And how do you go about coming up with realistic timelines for a project and managing scope creep? Because, I mean, we're a software development company, and whenever we onboard a new client or we take on a new project, one of the questions obviously that comes up is, how much is this going to cost me? And that is usually based off more or less two things, and it's the resources that are going to be needed for the project. In other terms, the types of people who are going to be working on the project, whether they're like senior front-end developer, back-end developer, whatnot. And then the time that it's going to take to complete the project. And the time that's going to take to complete the project is more of the harder question to answer, especially when there are so many factors that are outside of our control. For instance, if we're working on a front-end project where the designs are coming from a different team, and we're like, oh, do we have the designs ready so that our developers can look at them and estimate how long it's going to take them? Like, yeah, the designs aren't ready yet, but like, give me like a ballpark figure. It's not always so straightforward. How is it in your experience? Have you come across similar situations, or what is usually your approach when it comes to defining timelines?
I think every project has that problem, whether it's your team doing all the work or there's other teams responsible for it. But there's a few things that you can do along the way. You'll never stop getting requests. So you have to have a really good, solid 3 to 5 year plan for your team or your product. What does that look like first? Because you can only get so much done with the team that you have. So I'm trying to think a good example, but every project is different. The key really, though, is to outline your 3 to 5 year plan. Outline what are you going to do this year, and it may be a small portion of your 3-year plan, but it's a way to get to the final plan. Your 3-year plan should be revisited every year, by the way. But what you're really trying to do is you work backward from your customer. You find out what they really need, not what they're asking for, not what you think they need, but what do they actually need? Because sometimes when you find out the problem they're trying to solve, it's not what they're asking for. And they don't know how to articulate it.
Yeah, the same thing when we talked about when you were starting as a UX designer and someone wanted something in blue, but they don't really know what they want. Yeah. We go back to the same.
So once you understand that, then you can start building out, okay, this is the work that we think we can get done this year. We're not going to do the UI. That's this other team. So we need to coordinate effort, make sure they know that we need this, and that's on their plan for next year, right? And as you start doing that, you'll understand all the dependencies and all the work that's involved. You may have to scope it down sometime. At Amazon, I like the way they do it. They have what's called OP1, OP2. That's operational planning.
Okay.
But we cut it into two sections in the year. So the first year is, what do we think we want to accomplish next year? And then in the middle of the year, we say, what's realistic?
Okay.
To get accomplished, because priorities might have changed.
Yeah, you're starting with the vision, and now you're defining more like.
So the OP2 is really what you're committing to for the next year.
Okay.
And that gets reviewed by your customers, stakeholders, and
you get everyone involved in that conversation.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Because we need to make sure that we're delivering what they need to deliver. Yeah. Now, what they're going to say is, well, this is a good start. It's not everything. We need this and this and this and this. Yeah. It's like, okay, here's our 3 YP, a 3-year plan.
Okay.
We got it covered, and it's going to be done in year 2 and 3. Right? To help us get there. So that way, when new requests come in, and whether it's related to that project or not, what I tend to do is I don't say no, because I don't think that's ever the appropriate answer. I say, well, let's review our goals for the year. If you want this component, which component do you want to remove out of our plan?
Prioritizing.
Well, we don't really want to. Like, okay, so you don't really need this. Oh no, we need those, but more. Or they say, no, we have to have this because of whatever strategic reason, security reason, whatever it is. Okay, which one do you want to remove? Oh, this one. This one takes precedent.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have those conversations. Right. And you have to know the trade-offs.
Yeah.
What are we giving up for what are we getting?
And that's a good exercise as well for also the customer to like think about, what do we actually need? What is most important for us at this time? Exactly. Like eventually everything will get implemented, but what are our priorities?
Yep. Yeah. But if you don't know your customer, then you're never going to get to a satisfactory end state.
Yeah. And that takes us then to the point of like getting to know your customer well and having that transparent, open conversation with them for everyone's benefit at the end of the day.
Yep. Yeah. And our end customer is always the person buying things off of Amazon.com or using AWS services, right? We consider that our end customer. How does it impact our end customer? Well, it could impact a lot of ways, right? It could lower operating costs, which should lower, the price of items, right? It could be you're providing more security around their personal data, right? So they're benefiting from that way because hackers can't get their data, right? It could be many different things, but you're always trying to approach it from the customer perspective. What benefit does this give our end customer? Then you have all the internal stakeholders, your partner teams, the team that is actually going to use the thing you're building, right? What do they need? Is this really fulfilling their pain points? Is it going to improve metrics in some way? Are we delivering packages faster with less issues, less returns, less broken items, whatever it is, right? I recently told my team, we need to make some changes and we need to start tracking data in a certain way, because if we don't track it, we can't improve. So, the first is really understanding how do we know this is successful? What metrics are we going to track to say, we did the right thing?
Yeah. I really like this approach. And this is something I'm going to be taking back with me as well. It really is like opening up the conversation, being like very transparent, reviewing things, and really, as you said, putting the customer first and really when you're working with other parties is reviewing and having them really focus on what's most important for them. And it's starting that conversation, taking leadership there. So that's really great. Now, this is a tech podcast. And I find it amazing that we've gone so far without talking about AI.
Okay.
But the dawn of AI is upon us, and I'm actually
The robots are coming.
They are coming. Yeah. Have you seen the Tesla robots? Yeah. That's actually incredible.
And the taxi and the
taxi
van
as well. Yeah.
I just saw that.
And I'm someone who's actually very excited about AI. I know a lot of people are afraid of it. The biggest question going around is like, am I going to lose my job? And you actually did a podcast about AI recently. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. A friend of mine, I hired him. I've hired him a couple of times. I would love to hire him again, but he doesn't want to move to Austin. His name, Taurus Omeja. And amazing. We've known each other for many years now, and a really good friend. So yeah. We've done a couple of podcasts together, but the AI one was our last one.
Okay, so I have a little. Where is it? Oh, here. I have a little bag.
Okay,
and we'll make this one a bit interactive. So we can talk about AI for days.
Yep.
But I have 3 questions around AI in here, and then I guess you can do a lucky dip, and we can pick one of the questions and talk about that. So go ahead.
Do it.
Feel free to give it to me to read out. It is my handwriting. I don't want to put you through the agony of having to decipher what I wrote.
Oh wow, there's a lot in here, huh?
There's 3 papers, but they're quite big, so you can.
I'll try not to cheat.
All right, here we go. All right. Not sure if you can read that there, but I'll read it out loud. Okay. It's a good one. How do you see AI and automation impacting software development teams and processes in the near future?
Oh, we already see an impact, at least at Amazon. We have a lot of AI tools that will write code for you, that will, we even have systems that can be part of the code commit and deployment.
Yeah.
So it can review the code, it can optimize the code for you. I've tried using some AI tools on my own, just like design a e-commerce shopping cart. It'll write all the code and you just kind of copy and paste it, modify it if you need to. But it is changing. Which is fantastic because humans have biases.
Yeah.
Whether we know it or not, we tend to get into habits. Even coding, we tend to just I like this algorithm, so I'll use this algorithm. It may not be the most optimal though.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just have to put code out fast. But these tools really help supplement. I wouldn't say they're quite yet ready to replace.
Okay.
But we use AI all over the place at Amazon.
Yeah.
Looking for trends, looking for things. I know we have AI and the shopping experience, AI and the human resource people tools.
Right.
I can go to a web page today and ask AI a question, and it'll find me a bunch of relevant information beyond what a search engine could do. We have it in security. We have it all over the place, and it's only growing.
Yeah.
I worked on a team where we use AI. We were building cold storage logistics tools for AWS. And basically we were monitoring what was in shipping containers. If they were everything we dealt with was temperature sensitive.
Okay.
So pharmaceuticals, food, things like that.
Yeah.
And so we would monitor everything from the in storage unit, how cold things are working, how well the temperature devices, whatever it is, like a AC is working.
Okay.
To make sure it's not going to fail during a trip.
Yeah.
And
this is during the journey, let's say in the trucks, let's say, or
from farm or from manufacturing to when it gets to the store.
Right.
Right. So we were utilizing all different IoT devices to monitor various things. We were also looking at weather, traffic.
So not just what's happening inside the actual, let's say, containers or whatever, it's also the surrounding.
How do we get these perishable items to where they need to go in the least amount of time with the least amount of hiccups, while still maintaining that they're in a good state.
That's incredible.
And so we were looking at everything from weather, flight patterns, flight delays, traffic on the road, traffic in the seas. Like
Wow.
when you're talking about the canals,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, a ship got lodged.
It was lodged,
parallel.
and then that disrupted the whole supply chain. Like,
we were in the middle of building this when that happened. And,
oh wow,
and it was a really good use case for us because we got to monitor all of this stuff. We even looked at geopolitical data.
Yeah,
to
which is important. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you're delivering something from the Middle East and there's some sort of uprising or whatever.
Yeah.
And we have a path straight through, we know we need to divert it, right?
Yeah.
As soon as we can.
Yeah.
The earlier, the better. So we were looking at all different things using machine learning. So I think right now we're at a place to where it's a value add, but it's not quite there to replace people yet.
Yeah.
Or at least not in the development scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Soon it could be.
It could be.
We're still at the very early stages.
We are at the early stages, but I think it's also the stage where a lot of people who might think they're in danger of being replaced, I feel like you can either stay in that phase of fear or you can kind of do something about it and adapt. I'm not sure if reskill would already fit into one of the things that you can do. But I think something that everyone can do anyway, and which is really important, is to at least stay up to date with all the changes that are happening, because things are happening really fast. Like it's really hard. Like we're in the tech space and I already find it challenging to keep tabs on everything and like what's happening here and there. So through having a bunch of conversations with people from different backgrounds and working on different things, I'm able to kind of, and wrap my head around like all the changes happening to try and keep up to pace.
I think one of the biggest things that we're going to see, or at least I think we should see soon, is how are we going to regulate AI?
Yeah.
Because if it's exponentially growing, right? And at some point it's going to grow so fast that it's going to be beyond what we can easily control.
Yeah.
And how are we going to regulate that?
Yeah.
And I don't mean just regulate it from, what type of AIs do we create? What are they responsible for? But who has access to it?
Mm-hmm.
If you can think about, if you merge quantum computing with AI and put that in the hands of a bad actor, they can literally do anything they want at that point. They could break into any government system.
Yeah.
Not that you can't already, but
it'd just be a bit easier to do it.
Way easier and way faster.
Maybe you could do a bit more damage as well.
Yeah. I think that's probably the next big thing in AI is what kind of regulations are going to go around it. And I think we need to worry about that before we need to worry about people losing their jobs
to AI.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'd like to close with one last question. And throughout your journey, what for you has been the most important piece of advice that you've received that's helped you in your career and maybe even in your personal life?
So one of my leaders at a previous company, I wanted to know how to grow,
right?
How to get promoted and things. And he told me, he said, "Don't worry about a promotion. Don't worry about money. All you need to worry about is doing a kick-ass job. Just put your all into it. Deliver for the customer.
Yeah,
and innovate. If you do that, if you're really aware of doing that and less about your career or money, because those can skew, if I want to make more money, I'm going to go do this thing, right?
Yeah.
It may not be the best thing. But if you're focused on delivery and upskilling and learning more and just performing better, money and promotions will come.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've shared that with my teams ever since because it's true. I have worked with many people that are way better and way smarter than me. And they've interviewed at places like Amazon and Google and Facebook and couldn't get in.
Wow.
And for me, it was not as much about the money or anything like that. I just wanted to know how to build at scale for Amazon.
Yeah.
And so that's what I learned how to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got in. And if I was just focused on money or my career,
then
it would have been next to impossible.
Yeah.
But I got the right skills to be able to apply it at a place like Amazon.
And that is some really good advice. And that is something that you can apply in all aspects of life. So yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah. Well, then, I think we're approaching the end of this episode. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and for sharing so many insights and knowledge and wisdom. I think that will be really helpful for a lot of our viewers out there. And for all of you tuning in, thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and like below. And as always, keep on exploring, keep on learning, and keep on sharing. Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
All right.